Good morning, and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, and I am here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations to bring you, the landowner, valuable information that you need regarding natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. At the Clark Law Firm, my focus as an attorney providing legal representation is solely on landowner, oil and gas right owner representation. Not company, not gas company, not pipeline company, only landowner representation. I represent landowners for gas leases, amendments, extensions, pipeline agreements, water line agreements, estate planning. I've been saying more and more. I've been doing more and more estate planning work for clients that I've represented for gas leases and pipelines, but then also new clients as well. Also, royalty and royalty deduction issues, very active in that area. Unitization issues, surface use agreements like for well pads, storage agreements, working on a pipe yard agreement right now, meter sites, compressor stations, essentially any and all contract negotiation or peripheral issues relating to oil and natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. So if you need representation, you can always contact me directly at 570-307-0702. It's 570-307-0702. But hopefully this isn't just a big commercial. We want to get landowner information out there. But also check out the website. Again, whether you need representation or looking for information, go to pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. What we think are very good websites that give you a lot of information, get you thinking. Whether you're looking for representation or information, really encourage you to check out those websites. And also on pagasleaseattorney.com, tomorrow morning, Monday morning, we will post this show in the radio show section of the website, so you can go back and listen to this show if you want to hear anything again. But also we have many other shows archived and available on the website, again at pagasleaseattorney.com. I've been doing the show now since August of 2010, so very proud of that as we come up and we start approaching here our 5-year anniversary of the radio show. Also, you can also follow me on Twitter at Doug Clark Law. Try to tweet out articles, information that I think would be interesting to you as the landowner. So you can do that. And then also through the website, you can follow us on Facebook, join there on Facebook as well. Okay, now we got all that out of the way. What are we going to talk about today? I'm going to start, I got this addendum. I say all the time, look, things come up during the week, give me ideas. This past week was a very active week. Came up with a lot of ideas for today's show. So it's always nice whenever you're sitting there with 10 different things that you're thinking about that you want to talk about to try to decide, okay, hey, what do we want to talk about here? And it was a tough decision, but what I've decided to do, I have this new addendum, or newer addendum from a company out in Tioga County. I have to say, I've been having a lot of problems with some of the way companies have operated now that they have leverage. Understandably, I guess, they're really tending to use that leverage. But whenever you have leverage as a landowner, you need to know that, hey, that's your opportunity to use that leverage for your benefit. So in any event, received this new addendum. I'm not going to get too specific on it as far as the company goes, but got this new addendum, was looking through these terms, and I have to say, and look, I'm always going to be honest, I was very impressed with these addendum terms. I went through the addendum, had a conference with my client, went over everything, and I said, quite frankly, I don't know that it's worth going back and forth with the company to try to fight and negotiate to get better terms, because these are probably as good as you're ever going to get. And if we do that and we try to go back and we work and we try to go back and we ask for more and fight out some things, well, there's a good chance that you're not going to see any gains of substance. That if we are able to make this better in any way, it's probably not going to be anything material. We're probably actually not even going to make it any better, quite frankly. So let's not get you a larger legal bill. Let's not spin our wheels so you get more of a bill and everything stays the same. Let's go ahead and say, hey, look, if you like the money, if you like the bonus, if you like the royalty, there's probably not much we can do to make this agreement any better. So if you're ready to go, hey, look, we can do this. Now I'm going to tell you that's so rare, but it was true in this case. So now again, you got to look at what's the bonus. We got to look at what the royalty is. We got to look at how the royalty is being calculated, which again would be part of the addendum here. But overall, this addendum was very, very strong. I haven't seen an addendum this strong in probably years. So I was really happy to see that. Now, let's turn to some of the addendum terms. Now, the reason why I decided to talk about this week, or this next section here on royalties, is because I have been talking about royalty addendums. There's so many loopholes in this royalty language for the companies. And you got to be so careful. And a lot of times, look, you're not going to be able to change this language in a lot of cases. Some cases you can, some cases you cannot. In the cases that you can change the language, it's probably going to be significantly to your benefit. So if you hear me, you listen to the show and you say, well, that guy says we can't really change that language, let's go ahead and sign. No, that's not what I'm saying. And of course, every situation is unique and different. This isn't specific advice for any single person. But my overall advice, I guess, for everybody is get somebody, an attorney who understands and knows what they're doing and can give you good, solid advice. But what I'm saying is, don't think just because you hear me say, oh, well, you probably can't make this better, that it's not worth looking into to make sure that you can't make it better. Because if you are one of those cases where it can be made better, that could be the difference of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even more, depending upon your acreage and what you can do with the language. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations. And we're talking about royalties and the royalty addendum provision. And my point is any time that you have a lease offer, you really need to make sure that you're going to have it reviewed by a knowledgeable attorney, and then who can tell you, hey, look, I think we can make this better. Here's where the weaknesses are. Here's where it's strong. What do you want to do? How do we handle it from here? And obviously, the more experience, the better, but make sure it's being reviewed and you're having a conference. You're going over this, whether it be in person or telephone, and understanding everything. So sometimes, if it's only 1 out of 10, I'm just making these numbers, 2 out of 10, whatever number we want to use, that you can change royalty language to make it stronger, you need to make sure that you know whether you're in that 1 or 2 out of 10. Because if you are, that's going to be a substantial change for you. You need to look into this. So what do we have in this particular case? Like I say, there's all kinds of loopholes that are out there. I see more and more and more where these leases, they all have, all of a sudden the addendum terms all have headings, and the headings say things like no deduction clause. And in this particular case, and I see them in a lot of different ways, this lease here also says royalties no deduction clause. So what does that mean? Well, to any person who can read, to any person who can hear, if somebody says this is what the provision says, they believe, okay, this is what I want. The one thing, I don't know much about oil and gas development. I don't know much about leases. I don't know much about that stuff, but I do know that I want to have my royalties without deductions. That's something that pretty much, if you're listening to the show, I'm sure that you know that you want to have your royalties paid without deductions for items such as gathering, transportation, these pipeline costs, compression, and so on. We do not want to have those deducted from your royalty payments. So like I said, and I've talked about in recent weeks, that there are many different ways that companies interpret, in many times the same language, in an effort, in my opinion, in most cases, to look to see, hey, can we take deductions? Because if you're able to charge the landowner pipeline gathering, transportation, compression costs, if you're able to charge those to the landowner, well, they're paying them and not you as the company, and obviously that's going to be a good thing for you if you're the company. So, turning to this particular section here. So in this particular addendum I get, and like I said, I can't believe I'm even saying this because I never thought I'd say this again. I love this addendum offer by this company. I love it. I have to say, I absolutely love it. However, I want to explain this provision and something, certainly that my client and I talked extensively about. So there's a provision here that says, the heading, all capitals, underlined, make no mistake, it's called Royalties No Deductions Clause. So right there it is. Doesn't get much clearer than that. Royalty addendum, and it's called Royalties No Deductions Clause. Well, that sounds great. So I see that, and I got to be honest, I don't get too excited when I see that language because I see things like that all the time. And then I go ahead and I read the language, and I just, not laugh literally, but kind of in my mind just say, well, all right, this is how they're looking to get around this issue. So let me go through this clause, and I'm going to break this down. And again, whether you have this offer, whether you have a lease, whether you're considering a lease, all of these things are relevant to you. And if you're considering a pipeline agreement or any other type of agreement, this just gives you some insight to reasons why you need to be looking at these issues. You need to be saying to yourself, okay, I might need to make sure that I'm double checking everything. I'm reading something, I think I understand what it says, but I better get some more assistance because a mistake and a bad decision could really come back and cost me a lot of money. Not only could it cost me a lot of money, it could have more of an impact on my property than I ever anticipated. So you need to make sure that you're getting this assistance. Here's the provision. It starts off, it is agreed between the lessor and lessee, and I'm going to substitute. I'm going to say company and landowner to make it easier to follow for the listeners. Okay, so we got, it is agreed between the landowner and the company that notwithstanding any language herein to the contrary. Now, I'll give you a little insight. That means despite everything else. So it's saying it's agreed between the landowner and the company that despite everything else in this lease, all oil, gas, and other proceeds accruing to the landowner under the lease or by law shall be without deduction, directly or indirectly, for the cost of producing, gathering, storing, separating, treating, dehydrating, compressing, processing, transporting, and marketing the oil, gas, and other products produced under the lease. Okay, wow, that sounds pretty darn great. And I agree, we love that. That's so far so good. Royalties without deductions, and gives the laundry list. Then we have, we always know that we need to look for these words. It's not the word but it is close. It's the word however. So it says, however, a prorated share. Now it says a specific amount here, but I'm not going to give that information exactly what the royalty offer was here. But it says here, however, I'm going to make up the number. We'll say it's a 15% royalty here that this landowner was offered. So it says, however, a 15% pro rata share of such costs which result in enhancing, here's that word, enhancing the value of marketable oil, gas, or other products to receive a better price may be deducted from the landowner's share of production, so long as these costs are reasonable and customary. All right, reasonable and customary. Do not exceed the company's actual cost of such enhancements, and are generally, pay attention to this now, new stuff here, never seen this before, I've never seen this before. It goes on, it says, and are generally recognized and accepted by the industry as value-added enhancements to the landowner. Now, I'm up against this break. I'm just going to repeat that phrase. I'm going to go back after the break. We're going to break this down in real detail. So it goes on to say then, right there at the end, it talks about that these enhancements need to be generally recognized and accepted by the industry as value-added enhancements to the landowner. We get back, I'm going to tell you some of my thoughts about this. Stay tuned. You're listening to All Things Marcellus here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, I represent landowners and only landowners. And this is the show for you as the landowner. We're looking to get you up to speed, get you thinking, get you educated on these terms, and get you aware of what you need to be looking at and to put you on guard, because too many landowners are not on guard out there and are being taken advantage of. You're being taken advantage of too much. So we want to make sure that we give you some of the tools that you need to be thinking and guide you, and hopefully you're finding this to be valuable. I'd also really encourage you to check out pagasleaseattorney.com. Again, not just for representation, but for information. Been doing the show, like I said in the first segment, since August of 2010. So you can go back, check out pagasleaseattorney.com, check out pipelineattorney.com. We'll have today's show up on Monday morning, tomorrow morning, and then we'll also we have already radio shows archived and available that you can go back and check out. Listen to a lot of different issues, talking some about royalty deductions and royalty addendum terms with gas leasing here today. I've talked a lot about this over time, and the reason why is because it is right now the biggest issue facing the majority of people in Pennsylvania. So we want to make sure that we're educating you, and we also want to make sure, very importantly, that if you're a landowner who's in negotiations for a lease or in discussions of a lease, or if you are unleased and you anticipate that you may be leased in the future, this is information that you need to know. And it gets complex, it gets kind of tricky, and it's hard when you're just hearing this, but hopefully you see, wait, we need to take a step back, become educated, go see somebody who knows, and talk to somebody. You don't even have to see them. We need to talk to somebody who understands these issues and can help you out. You know, I say don't need to see them, and I'm not trying to make this a commercial again. Really not. But I do want to say, you know, I have clients who are all across the state, and I have clients who reside in different parts of the country. I have a client in California. We've been very active over the last month. I've had a client, I love to say this, in Micronesia, which I have to say I had to look up on the internet to find out where it even was. A client I've had in London and India, Canada, all across the United States, Alaska, so Hawaii, we're everywhere. So, you know, and I haven't met those people, but we've been able to very effectively work together through the emails, through telephone conference calls, and it's worked out extremely well. And generally speaking, you know, a lawyer, and certainly I haven't, but a lawyer generally doesn't need to go see your property. Very rarely in most of the things that we're talking about here. You know, some cases maybe you do, but in most cases, even when I have clients who are very local, I don't need to go up and see the property. All that does is result in you as the landowner incurring more legal expenses and not typically resulting in any benefit. And a good lawyer, in my opinion, without a doubt, a good lawyer is always going to be factoring in everything I do. Is this going to result in something productive for my client, or is it going to just simply result in increased expenses? But also, you know, you can do something and ultimately it didn't result in a benefit. However, it had a legitimate potential to result in a benefit. So everything that you do, I think, as a good attorney should be calculated to either directly benefit or have the potential to benefit the client. And we certainly don't want to be doing things like, oh, well, yeah, I better get out there and look at your property because you have a pipeline easement request. If I did that, I'd be doing nothing but driving around the state all the time looking at properties, which I don't believe would give me, in virtually every case that I've ever worked on, any benefit. And I say, you know, in some cases, I mean, there are cases when I need to do it, we do it, but it's not very often. So I just want to say that to people to be aware that, you know, a couple things. One, if you're getting an attorney and they want to run out to your house and look at your property, question why that's necessary. But also, if you're out there and you say, hey, look, you know, I like what this guy's saying. I'd like to possibly have him represent me, but he's far away. Don't be afraid of that. You know, if you're interested, give us a call, 570-307-0702. Yeah, I have clients, Susquehanna, Bradford, Tioga, Lycoming. I mean, literally all across the state. Greene County now, Armstrong County, Allegheny County, Westmoreland County, Butler County, Mercer County, you know, all of these different counties. So, you know, anywhere in the state, if you need representation and you're interested in finding out, hey, am I the guy for you, you can always contact us 570-307-0702. And if I'm not the guy for you, find a guy or girl who is right for you. You need the person that's right for you. And if it's not me, please make sure it's somebody, because we want to make sure you're protected. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. So I'm talking about this royalty provision. And as I've talked recently, these royalty provisions in addendum, which are offered, usually, and look, here's how it actually goes. Not usually. Here's what happens. You as the landowner get a lease offer. The company provides you the landman, gives you the form lease, and probably gives you some addendum terms. Now, a lot of times they hold back addendum terms and you can get more terms. Sometimes they give you, they kind of throw the kitchen sink of what they're willing to give you. But usually there's some give and take. Experience tells you what that give and take can be, or what can you reasonably expect. What has this company and other companies agreed to in the past? All of those things come in to decide, between you and your attorney, how do you want to respond? How aggressive do you want to be? How can you make this better? Well, one of the things that happens when a company offers you a lease with an addendum, normally you will see a provision that attempts or appears to address royalties. And they do address royalties. The question is, what is going to be that impact? Yes, it says royalties. Yes, it says no deductions. Yes, there's language there. But what does it mean? And yes, you can read it and you can sit there and understand the words. But practically speaking, how will that language be applied to your future production and royalties? And that's what you want to try to understand. And quite frankly, there are times where there is no guaranteed explanation, where you say, well, here's the deal. Here's how a company may interpret it. Here's another way they may interpret it. Here's what we're seeing companies do with this language. Here's what we're seeing other companies do with this language. And we become educated and we understand and we say, well, what do we think? Do we want to go back and see if this company will change the language to appease some of our fears? Or do we want to say, okay, you know what? I'm comfortable with this language, even though I understand that, even though it says no deductions, that I may actually have deductions, but I understand that, and I'm willing to do this. What I don't like to see is landowners signing leases, and it's happening now, again, all the time. Landowners are signing leases thinking they're not going to get or receive any deductions from their royalty payments, and unfortunately, I believe many of these people, these landowners, are going to be very disappointed because the company landman's telling them what the company wants them to be told, and they're not understanding these provisions. And I also believe wholeheartedly that many landmen don't understand these provisions. And there's two things. If they go out there and they say, oh, you're not going to have your deductions, you're not going to have deductions, either they don't understand in some of these cases, or they're purposely misleading you, or perhaps they do understand and don't think there's going to be deductions, but they're just wrong. Or finally, maybe there won't be deductions, but there are so many loopholes, and there are different companies that are treating the same language differently, so we need to be careful. All right, thank you. All right, here we go. Getting back to what I was doing is, this is a new addendum that I received in the last, I think maybe even this week, but the last week or two, from a company being very active out there in Pennsylvania right now. And this royalty provision, like I said before, has the heading all capitals, royalties, no deductions clause. Well, that sounds great. What landowner is not going to read that language and say, hey, I'm not going to have any deductions? Well, sounds great. And the first sentence says, I'm paraphrasing, there'll be no deductions. Royalties shall be paid without deductions. Goes on to list gathering, transportation, marketing, all the different things that we'd like to see. It says no deductions. Then the next sentence says, however, and I'm using this as an example, we'll say it's a 15% royalty case or lease. It says, however, a 15% pro rata share of such costs which result in enhancing the value of marketable gas to receive a better price may be deducted from the landowner's production. Now here, please pay attention. So long as these costs are reasonable and customary, do not exceed the company's actual costs of such enhancements, and are generally recognized and accepted by the industry as value-added enhancements. Now that begs the question. What is generally recognized and accepted by the industry as value-added enhancements? What is it? Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't know. I don't know what this company's opinion is as to which enhancements are generally accepted in the industry as value-added. Why don't I know? Well, if you're a regular listener, if you follow these things, you'll know different companies treat enhancements differently. Different companies treat enhancements differently. You can take a lease with Chesapeake and Statoil, who share leases. They partner in these leases. They each have interest in the same lease. And under enhancement language, under this market enhancement clause, well, Chesapeake will take those deductions. They will call them enhancements and say we're allowed to deduct those costs because they're enhancements. They're value-added enhancements. Statoil says we're not going to do that. We're not calling these costs that we incur from a well site to this interstate pipeline, typically, we're not going to treat that as an enhancement, a value-added enhancement. So those are just two companies, and you could draw a line, and we line them up. You have some companies on one side and some on the other. So what is the generally recognized and accepted standard by the industry? I don't know. And I don't know, and I'm asking this company, we'll see what they have to say, but I don't know. And I don't know who does know. I really don't. If you ask Chesapeake, they're going to say, oh yeah, this is the acceptable standard. But then you go ask Mitsui, Statoil, Cabot, Southwestern, WPX, Talisman, go ask them. Shell, ask those guys. Well, if they're not taking deductions under the market enhancement clause and saying that this is an enhancement between the well site and this interstate pipeline or this first point of sale, well, then I would think that the industry standard is that costs between the well site and this point of sale, from that wellhead there until you sell it, that would not be an enhancement. But if you ask Chesapeake, Anadarko, and Chief, they would say, yes, cost incurred from the well site to the point of sale in dry gas areas, which is most of the state, that's actually an enhancement, and so therefore we can deduct those costs. So what is this company going to say? Are they going to be in the camp that says gas is marketable immediately at the wellhead in these dry gas areas, and so therefore any cost that we incur from the wellhead to the point of time where we sell it, we can deduct those costs? Or are they going to be in the other camp where they say gas, they don't have an opinion, they don't say gas is or is not marketable. What they say is that we're not going to take deductions from the wellhead generally to the interstate pipeline where there would be typically the first point of sale. So you got one group of companies doing it one way and one doing it another, and now you have this addendum saying that that there are going to be no deductions. However, they will you will have to share in any cost which result in enhancing the value of marketable gas, provided that these costs are generally recognized and accepted by the industry as value-added enhancements. So we don't know what that means exactly. So then, or at least I don't, and I'm going to tell you, no matter who tells me what it means, I don't know that they know what it means either, because time will tell how this company is going to interpret it. And in fact, the guy or girl who's interpreting it today may be somebody different in a few years when this person starts seeing royalties under this. Maybe the whole company's position has changed. Maybe the industry position has changed. We don't know those things. So what do I talk about with my landowner client? What I'm talking to you about. That, listen, here's what this says, here's what we see, there are different camps, here's what's going on. What do we do here? We want to maybe go back to the company and ask for some clarification. We want to maybe see if we can change this language. We want to see how they respond to that. We need to find out, hey, can we clarify this? Or what's your position with this? And then it gets very complicated, because whatever they say to us, if it's not in the agreement, and that's what you're probably going to find, company's going to say something orally, verbally, maybe even an email, but it's not part of the agreement. And all of these agreements say if it's not written in the agreement, it's not part of the agreement. So what do we do here? Okay, I'm up against it. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I'm going to talk more about this right after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Remember, you can always call me 570-307-0702. Check out pagasleaseattorney.com. Check out pipelineattorney.com. Get information, be educated, be informed. Get good quality information. Make the right decision for you and your family, because most of these agreements will almost certainly affect future generations. So please make sure you are protecting yourself, your family, and your property. Okay, talking about this addendum term in this case. Now, something that I stress to my clients, and I try to make sure that you guys know as listeners as well, there's not always these clear answers. We don't always have these clear answers. So if we don't have clear answers, what do we need to do? We need to understand the issues. We need to understand, if we don't have clear answers, well, what do we think may happen? And if we think something may happen, are we confident that it may happen? Are we fairly confident? Are we extremely confident? Or are we not really sure? All of those things are factors to help you as the landowner decide what you want to do. So what I mean by that, in this particular case, what I've just been talking to you about in this addendum term, which is clearly all capitals, does not get much more clear than these words. Royalties, meaning that's there's a colon there. So royalties, no deductions clause. Most people tune out right there. But you have to continue to follow. And then you read the first sentence, and that first sentence says, essentially, there will be no deductions for gathering, transportation, marketing, compression, all the things that we want to see. So we see no deductions clause. Read the first sentence. Oh, this is perfect. Then maybe that's at the point where you tune out as a landowner. So if they don't get you in the first sentence, then maybe they get you on the second sentence where you say, okay, this looks good, I tune out. But then the third sentence is the one that starts changing things, because that's where the however comes in. However is not all capitalized. However is not underlined or somehow highlighted. No, it's buried in the meat of this language. And it says, however, and essentially what it's saying is the landowner has to pay their share of enhancements that are done to add value to the gas. Now the question becomes, what is an enhancement? And that's where we're trying to figure out, can I tell you that as a client? Can I say, here's what you need to expect? And if I can't tell you that, I need to explain why I can't tell you that, and I need to explain how this may operate and what I think may occur, but explain to you too my level of confidence in what opinions I'm offering to you. And then also, is there a way to make this better? Sometimes with some of this language, we can ask questions, and when the company, or we can request alternative language, but when the company responds, well, that may give us some insight as to whether our concerns and fears are founded, meaning they're based in a reasonable basis here, or are they unfounded? Are they something that we're just off base and we don't need to worry about? Now, I'm going to jump back to last week real quick. I think it was last week, but here's what I mean by that. So we have this case where royalty language, I talked about this recently, another addendum provision where called something like a no deductions clause. And so it said, no deductions, all the good things, but the loophole in that language in that case was that a company could actually sell the gas to one of their affiliates or a subsidiary. And in fact, they could sell the gas to an affiliate at the wellhead. And a lot of companies do that, or several companies do sell the gas to an affiliate at the wellhead. So if your language says no deductions prior to the time that we sell the gas, well, that may sound good, but what if they sell it the second it comes out of the ground? Well, technically you're not receiving deductions because the gas is being sold immediately, and those transportation costs from the wellhead to the interstate pipeline, well, those aren't being deducted from your royalty payments because your royalty payments are based on the price that the company received as soon as the gas came out of the ground by their affiliate. So their affiliate pays them. So all the language about no deductions, well, there are no deductions. That's true because you're getting the wellhead price, but even worse than that, you'll be getting the wellhead price that the company is receiving from their affiliate, their subsidiary. So that's a pretty big loophole. What would occur that way? We'll see, but we need to be aware of that. And one of the things I preach to my clients, we do not want to have surprises. If we can avoid you being surprised, we certainly want to do that. So we're going to talk about this. And in that case, we say, okay, well, let's do this then. We love the language, but we see that there's a loophole that I think you could drive a truck through, perhaps even fly a blimp through. Big loophole here. So let's do this. Let's ask the company to say, hey, we like all this language, but let's throw in there to say, however, you as a landowner are entitled to, or that the company, you're entitled to royalties based upon a sale price to a third party at arm's length, meaning non-affiliated, and we'll say non-affiliated third party in an arm's length transaction, meaning that you guys aren't in nice and close here. You're dealing at arm's length. So we ask for that language, and lo and behold, no, we're not going to agree to do that. So what does that do? That gives us an indicator that, hey, our fears about the company selling it essentially to itself at the wellhead, well, they're even more legitimate now. They were very legitimate to begin with, but now we know that the company refuses to eliminate that loophole. So we need to understand and believe and recognize that that loophole may be something that the company uses. So now, if the company won't change that language, client, attorney, me and my client are discussing this, and we say, well, all right, here's the bonus. Here's your royalty percentage. Here's what's going on with this loophole. Here are all the other provisions. Here's what's going on in your area. Here's what I'm seeing in lease offers in your area. Here's what I'm seeing in the state. Here's the trend we're seeing. Here's historically what we've seen. And here's the best that we can tell of what may happen, at least in the immediate future. Understanding that I can't predict the future, but understanding what we're looking at and what we can kind of guess and gather, but we're making an intelligent and informed. When I say guess, I mean, be careful with that word. We're trying to predict the best we can, but recognizing that anytime you're talking about predicting future behavior, prices, activity, a way a company is going to pay royalties, that's not nowhere near an exact science. So we're factoring all that in. You as a landowner need to say, okay, recognizing all of these issues, recognizing all of these problems and potential loopholes, do I still want to move forward? And it very well may be that you say, you know what, I'm going to move forward because I think this is in my best interest for all these other reasons. But that's a very important evaluation process. Now, some people may say, well, okay, I recognize all of these things, and based on the fact that the royalty offer is very low, maybe the bonus offer is very low, I'm willing to pass on this right now in hopes that things may get better. Now, please, please, please understand that that is not advice for anybody, because that's where it's so important that you're speaking to somebody who really understands these issues that can help you out and direct you and offer you guidance. Because you can make a bad decision. And a bad decision, these are bad decisions. I said before, I think going into the break there, I mean, these bad decisions, if you make a decision, that not only affects you immediately, and it really can, but it also affects your property, and it can affect your children and even your grandchildren. So we need to make sure that you're making these decisions, you're getting all the information that you can. And I assure you, this isn't getting easier. It's even becoming more complicated, where you really need to understand how companies are doing this, what this royalty language means, and what we're seeing out there. You really need to have that information. And most people, you just can't go online and get that. And it's not to be a commercial for me. It's just the truth. So again, we need to look at this. We need to understand where the problems are. And we look at this case and we say, okay, well, in this royalty language, you're saying as a company, there's no deductions, but if we do things to enhance or add value to marketable gas, if we do that, and that value add and enhancement is generally recognized and accepted by the industry as just that, as a value added enhancement to the gas, well, then we can deduct that cost from your royalty. Well, what is that? What is that? So what do? We're going to follow up. We're going to try to get some clarity on that. And then we're going to see how that company responds. And then when we get that response, we're going to decide, okay, are we pleased with that response? Does that take care of the issue? Does it put it to rest? There's a good chance that it will not. Then we decide, do we need to respond again? Do we need to further develop this issue? Or do we feel that we've reached an impasse, that this is going no further now, and it's a point where you have some decisions to make as a landowner? And then what are we going to do? We're going to look at the totality. We're going to look at the totality of all of the circumstances, of the bonus, of the royalty percentage itself. You know, if you have 20% and you know you're going to have deductions versus a 12.5% being the state minimum with deductions, well, that may have a big impact on your decision. We also want to look at the other language. We want to look at your acreage, but we want to look at what's going on in the area. Are there any other companies? How close is development? You know, we want to look at the big picture and try to guide you and help you as the landowner to make the right decision. But before you make a decision, you need to make sure that you exhaust the opportunity to eliminate or close these very complicated loopholes. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. Again, I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations. And also, you can always contact the office, 570-307-0702, and check out pagasleaseattorney.com and pipelineattorney.com. So, okay, back to this particular provision. You know, I said I jumped back and was talking about last week where there was a loophole in the alleged or asserted no deduction addendum offered by the company. There was a loophole there, and we tried to close it by saying, hey, we need to make sure that the landowner is getting their royalties paid, not on an affiliated sale where you sell it to yourself at the wellhead. We want to make sure that royalties are going to be calculated on a legitimate third-party transaction, not you as a company selling it to your subsidiary, but you as a company selling it to a third party that you have no relationship to. Well, that got rejected. So then again, we have to go through that evaluation process. Now here in this case, we're looking at this value-added enhancement, saying also that it has to be recognized and accepted by the industry. Well, the concern there was, well, what does that mean? What is recognized and accepted by the industry? Well, I don't know for the reasons I talked about before. So we'll see how the company responds to that. We'll see if we can get any more clarity to that. And then whatever those responses are, we'll decide that we go back again, or do we go ahead and we start looking at this and we try to understand, look, it's not going to get any better. Here's the best anticipation that we can have as far as what's going to occur. Here's what we foresee, but we recognize that, you know, this is not an exact science, and this is their best estimation as to what may occur in the future. And you as the landowner make your decision, whether it is move forward, to continue with discussions, or to say, you know what, thank you, but no thank you. But it's so critical there. Please remember, this isn't advice for any certain person. You have to, you have to get fired up there. You have to look for yourself. You have to look for yourself. You have to look at your case, and you have to get good quality personal advice. Okay, I'm up past against it again here too. Be back for this last segment, and I'm going to finish this up. Stay tuned. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark, Clark Law Firm. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, you can always contact me directly, 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. Check out pagasleaseattorney.com. Check out pipelineattorney.com. If you need oil and gas lease representation, you can always contact me or get information and contact whoever you want to contact. But please make sure that you're getting this information. Okay, what I'm talking about, I want to take a step back. I started to say something and I kind of backed away from it earlier. Just I get sometimes sidetracked. But what happens now? What's happening today across Pennsylvania is when a landowner, in a lot of different ways, we're seeing more top leases where somebody's leased, but their lease is getting ready to expire and they're getting new offers. It's very common now. We're seeing people whose leases have expired and receiving new offers, and we're seeing some people who were never leased and now getting offers. And a lot of times what companies are doing is you may have a piece of land, it's valuable, there's gas there, and they want to develop it, but because of budget constraints and concerns, companies aren't just generally leasing across the area. They're targeting areas that they're getting ready to develop in the immediate future, in the next year, in the next 2 years, and sometimes even shorter. So there are many people out there now who are starting to get offers. I'm getting more and more calls for gas leasing all across the state. A lot of activity in Tioga County, but not just there, all across the state. So what happens is these companies are evolving, and they're very smart. I can't say it enough. They're really, really smart. So we need to be smart too. So what do they know? They know that all the buzz is royalties without deductions. So what do? They present the landowner with a gas lease. And there's one company out there that typically they give the landowner the lease, and there's only one addendum term. And that addendum term asserts or represents or appears to say there'll be no deductions. You need to understand that. You really need to understand it. Does it really mean that? But also, so what else do we see? Companies, in most companies, what they'll do is they'll give you a lease offer, but many companies will also give you the addendum or a proposed addendum. Remember, it's not your addendum. It's from the company. And the addendum that the company presents to you with their form lease offer has some kind of language or even the heading that says no deductions royalty clause, royalties - no deductions. Whatever they need to do to put out there to you, to give you the impression as a landowner that you're not going to have deductions. So they're presenting you with language that says no deductions. Well, common sense to me would say, well, company, you're telling me you're going to pay me royalties without deductions, and I read the language that you're offering, and you're telling me, yes, landowner, there'll be no deductions. Well, then why can't we come to an agreement on some language that I would be more comfortable with as the landowner? You tell me this language means no deductions, but I have some concerns about this. I think there may be some loopholes or some ways that deductions still may be taken. So how about we change some things? Oh, well, maybe the company say, maybe we can't do that. We can't do that. Well, if you truly mean and your intent is to pay me as the landowner without deductions, then we should be able to come to an agreement on language that's going to really make that a lot more likely, probable, and hopefully guarantee that you're not going to have deductions. So remember, think about this. You as the landowner are sitting out there, and here comes the landman. I don't want to go a show without saying it. The landman works for the company, and he or she hands you the lease offer. And in that lease offer, there's language in there. There's a heading in the addendum that they present to you that says royalty without deduction. Remember, they're offering this. Their attorneys have drafted this. They have drafted this language. They didn't throw it together. They have very, very carefully drafted this language. So now you need to understand what that means. Now, I talked about last week and I talked earlier in the last segment about there being a loophole that a company in one agreement that I've looked at recently could sell the gas, in my opinion, at the well site to an affiliated company and give you, the landowner, the well site price, which would not technically have deductions, but essentially that's what it does, because they're giving you the price that they're going to get at the wellhead. But not only that, even more concerning than that is, well, if they sell it to an affiliate or a subsidiary, are they going to sell it at what the true market price is? Are they going to give themselves a discount? And then as the subsidiary or affiliate, are they going to take that gas at the wellhead and they're the ones that are going to transport it to the interstate pipeline, say, and sell it there at a higher price? Or is that going to happen there? We need to watch out for that. Now, in this case, and I'm talking about this week, this royalty deductions provision, it actually finishes with a sentence saying that royalties shall be based on the price received by the company for the sale of gas from non-affiliated third parties in a bona fide arm's length transaction. That is exactly what we wanted in the clause last week that I talked about. In the last segment, had the company agreed, which we've requested, to that language, then I would be very, very comfortable. Very comfortable. But the company said no. Well, you say, okay, Doug Clark, this company, you just told me that they offered this. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And that's really good. But in this case, they give you this arm's length sale situation and say, we're not going to sell it to ourselves and give you a discounted price. But what it doesn't do here, what this leaves open is what is the company, the gas company you're leased to, what are they going to call enhancements? Are they going to say the gas is ready for sale at the wellhead, and therefore that anything we do to such as transportation, compression, to gather this gas and move it to an interstate pipeline, where in this case we're going to sell it, and we're actually going to sell it to a non-affiliated party, a legitimate third party who's going to buy the gas at a real market price. That's great. We want that. However, that market price may be then, or the company's going to say, yeah, we sold it at $4 per unit of gas, but we enhanced the value of the gas because we took it from the well site and we moved it, maybe we compressed it, whatever we did post-production costs we incurred from the wellhead to get it to the point where we sold it in a legitimate third-party transaction. So they sold it there, but they enhanced the gas from the time of the well site, which means if they do interpret it that way, that you as a landowner, instead of getting $4 gas in my example, where it's sold at the interstate pipeline in this case, now they're going to take that $4 per unit and they're going to subtract from that. They're going to say, well, it cost us per unit of gas maybe $1, maybe more, but we'll say maybe it cost them $1 to transport it, to gather it, to process it, to compress it, to get it to the point where we could sell it at $4. So, yes, we like that we're getting a legitimate third-party real market price, but we don't like that the company is taking $1 away from that and saying instead of giving you royalty on $4 gas, we're only going to give you royalty on $3 gas, or because we're going to deduct those costs, because those really aren't post-production costs, they are enhancements. So that's the loophole here. Can we close it? How do we try to close it? If we can't close it, then we go into our evaluation. How do we handle this? Is this the lease offer that you want to move forward with? We understand the uncertainty. We've tried to eliminate it. We've done the best we can. Here's what we're left with. Does it make sense to keep going back and forth and keep incurring legal expenses? Well, at some point it does not make sense. So landowner, you have some decisions. Do you want to move forward here, or do you think, hey, look, you know what? I don't like the offer, I want to wait. But if you're going to do that, gosh, you got to know what's at stake there. So no specific advice. Please get help in these issues. Reach the end here today. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark. Have a great week, everyone. And we'll be back next Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m.